Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about quite a unique tarot deck that was published recently. That is the Philosopher's Tarot. Here is the box. This is created by an author who goes by the name of Sereptie, who is otherwise known as Craig Laubach. Here is the box. It's quite a hard cardboard, solid box. This is published by Repeater Books, which is a division of Watkins Publishing. So this is quite a unique deck, and I particularly wanted to get this deck because I have been waiting a long time for a Philosopher's Tarot to be created. I have a very long held interest in philosophy. My main focus for many years has been esoteric philosophy, but I'm also interested in other philosophies generally. So I particularly wanted to get this deck. So there's the box. Here is the little book. It comes with the deck. And for each of the major arcana cards, there is a very good description of the depiction of the different philosophers on each of the cards. So that's really useful. The subtitle of this deck is An Apprenticeship in Philosophy. And I think that's quite accurate, because I think for people who are new to philosophy, I think you could learn a lot about the different philosophers and their philosophies from this deck. So I think an apprenticeship in philosophy is quite close to the mark. I think it's really useful in that way. So I like the way that for each of the major arcana cards there is a good background. There's a background to the philosophers and what their main philosophy was, and also how that relates to the major arcana. And I also like the way that for each of the minor arcana cards there is less information, but there is a philosophical thought for each of the minor arcana cards, but they're in relation to the usual meaning for the minor arcana. So I just think that works really well. I really like that idea. I think this deck is quite well done. I'm going to show the cards in a moment. I think the deck is quite well done. I think it's about time that a Philosopher's Tarot was created. And I think people would be surprised just how well philosophy does weave into tarot. I think a lot of people don't realise or may not be aware that even esoteric philosophy in a number of ways is related to conventional philosophy. For example, the Golden Dawn were quite influenced by the Romantic philosophers, and Crowley was very much influenced by Nietzsche, for example. So, you know, these connections between esoteric philosophy and conventional philosophy, you know, these things are not mutually exclusive. They're not as mutually exclusive as you think. So I quite like the way the book's been written. So far I like this deck because I find it's quite good for mind expansion, and it's also quite good for problem solving. So I really like that. So now to show some of the cards. And the card stock is quite good. It's quite good. Watkins generally makes fairly good tarot decks as far as cardstock is concerned. Here is the back. Now these cards have a bit of a gloss on them, but not too much. I know it's showing up on the screen here a bit on camera, but when you are handling the cards, it just looks like a good lamination. So needed to mention that. Okay, now to start with some of these figures of philosophy with the major arcana. The Magician, it's Felix Guattari. I also love the way that the Waite-Smith deck has been chosen for this, because the Waite-Smith deck is fairly well known, and I love the reworking of the major arcana figures. So here you have the name of the philosopher, and you have the usual title underneath. So Felix Guattari as the Magician. Hypatia as the Empress. And the best thing about this is that you've got the book to refer to with the deck, but you could also do your own follow-up if you want to about some of these figures. Hypatia is the Empress. This is one of my personal favourites. Freud, Sigmund Freud for the Emperor. That is just so totally appropriate. I have often thought of Freud as the Emperor. I can't imagine Freud as any other figure, really. It's just so appropriate. Sigmund Freud as the Emperor. Because in his time, he absolutely represented authority for his thinking. Another personal favourite, Karl Marx as the Hierophant. I love this too. Now, strangely enough, the Emperor and the Hierophant card are two of my least favourite in the major arcana, but now I really like them because I love Sigmund Freud as the Emperor and I love Karl Marx as the Hierophant. So I think that's great. Now for the lovers, Soren Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard was an existentialist philosopher. So this is an interesting choice for the lovers. And the lovers card is also about decisions and decision making. So I think that's quite appropriate. Soren Kierkegaard for the lovers. Another favourite, Plato for the Chariot. Plato is probably my all-time favourite philosopher. So I really like this. I think Plato is another great choice for the Chariot. Or the Charioteer. Gilles Deleuze as the Hermit. Now this is a philosopher that I had heard of and was not all that familiar with, but I am much more familiar with this philosopher now. And this deck has introduced me to a book one of his books, that one of Deleuze's books that I didn't even know about, so I'm really pleased. So this deck is opening up my mind even further along the way with philosophy, so it's great. Julies Deleuze for the Hermit. Wheel of Desire for the Wheel of Fortune. So appropriate. Michel Foucault for the Hanged Man. A lot of these choices are very appropriate. Georges Batal for the Death card. I like the colouring of these cards as well. I've always been a bit of an albino tarot fan. The colouring of the albino. So for other people who like different colouring for the Waite-Smith, this is also good for that reason. So that's quite a great death card. I like the look of that. Very appropriate. Deconstructionism for the Tower. I'm not a huge fan of deconstructionism. Sometimes I think deconstructionism should be deconstructed sometimes. It can go too far. Deconstructionism is a good choice for the Tower. Franz Kafka for the Moon. It's a wonderful choice. I love the way that this deck brings thought into the tarot, more thought, because a lot of people mainly associate tarot with intuition. So that's why this is a really good problem-solving deck. Another personal favourite, Friedrich Nietzsche as the Sun. Perfect, just perfect choice. I love the way that he is representing the divine child, but he's still got his moustache. I just think that is so appropriate for the Sun card. And it's got to be another one of my favourite cards. And Immanuel Kant as Judgment. So, there's some of my favourite major arcana cards. Now, for the minor arcana, you have the usual suit names. So, for the Ace of Wands, you have Acid Communism. Acid Communism is really the new left. But it's about creative and imaginative new ways. So Acid Communism. Two of Wands is Process Ontology. I think this deck is really good for people who not only want to be more aware, learning more about philosophy. There's a whole range of philosophies in this deck. but just for general mind expansion and for more awareness about philosophy. Knight of Wands, Vladimir Lenin. I think it's also a great way to also learn more about history. And this is to do with ancient history, modern history. Now this one I think will make a lot of people think. Ace of Cups, base materialism. It's a very interesting choice. I also like the way that these cards, even make me look at things in different ways. So I like that. Five of Cups, nihilism. Very true. I like that. Very prevalent these days, but I can understand why very much. The times we are living in, I can very much understand the higher incidence of nihilism. Like this for the Seven of Cups, the archetypes. That's a great choice. Love the colouring of this card. And Queen of Cups, Hildegard von Bingen. It's a pretty good choice. Like that. Now for Swords. The Kleinomen, or the Ace of Swords. That's to do with the swerving and movement of atoms. So that's really interesting. The Ace of Swords. Thought-provoking choice for the Three of Swords. Remain true to the earth. I think there is great sorrow in connection to the state of the earth. I like this choice for the Three of Swords. Really interesting Nine of Swords, the metamorphosis. That's a really good choice. Nine of Swords. And Baruch Spinoza, Page of Swords. Now for Pentacles. The Ace of Pentacles, the Sacred Conspiracy. This is a card that will make you think a lot. What should? The Sacred Conspiracy. Four of Pentacles, the Capitalist. What else could you choose, really? And Renee Descartes as Page of Pentacles. Okay, so there's some of the cards of the Philosopher's Tarot by Sereptie, otherwise known as Craig Laubach. I really like this deck. I'm really glad that someone has finally created a Philosopher's Tarot. I think it's long overdue. It's a unique deck. This, of course, will not be for everyone. I mean, it could be for everyone, but I think there's a certain percentage of people who are interested in philosophy. I think there should be more people interested in philosophy because it does create better overall awareness of what is happening in society and the world around you. But I think for people who want something different, who want to actually use tarot in better mind expansion, in better self-awareness of your own thinking as well, I think it's also a good deck. Problem solving I like this for problem solving, but I just think for general overall mind expansion it's great for that. And I think we're living in times that has really called for this. I think its time has come, and I think this is a great deck for those reasons. It's unique. I love the way that the images have been chosen for the different philosophers, and the minor arcana has the different thoughts associated with each of the cards. I really do quite like this deck. So I wanted to tell people about this because I don't think this is very well known yet. It's been recently published. So the Philosopher's Tarot. I'll put some details below the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.